Hello, I believe I am live. It's 12:01, January 30th. Let me know in the chat if you guys can hear me okay. Hi, Adeline. Oh my goodness, it's 4 a.m. Hi, Lisa. Hello. So as we wait for people to join in, feel free to share your name and where you're from. And I'm also curious to know, like what kind of background you guys have with calligraphy and with copperplate. So if you guys are able to share a little bit about your experience with pointed pen calligraphy, and also whether you are a beginner or you have, if you're a professional calligrapher, or if you have any experience with copperplate specifically, just curious to know what kind of crowd we have here. Hi, Linda. Hello, hello. Hi, Donna. So I'm just going to be looking through the chat box and we'll get started in just a little bit. Thank you so much for joining in today. So some of you guys have asked if this was going to be shared, saved. So no worries if you guys have to leave early. I plan on doing this live for about an hour, and then afterwards, for those who have signed up through the link, I'm going to be sending a replay link afterwards. So no worries about that. Hi, Nancy, Amy, Kimberly. Okay, great. So some of you guys have modern calligraphy background, but not copperplate. Lefties are here. Australia. Hi, Jennifer. Oh, awesome. So yeah, so if you guys are here and you are a previous student, we are starting a new round this Thursday, February 1st. So you should have gotten an email from me regarding signing up for receiving new emails. So make sure to opt in for that. And let's see. Okay, so I'm just gonna get started. Feel free to use the chat box, and then if you guys have printed out this PDF that I've sent to you guys, it's like the 22-page PDF. I have it in front of me too, so that I can kind of walk you guys through how to use the guide sheets. So you should have received a packet of the Copperplate guide sheets as well as the basic traceable strokes. So we're just going to have like a casual hangout, and I'll be sharing with you guys the importance of using guide sheets for learning the traditional scripts like Copperplate, even Spencerian. And then I see here some of you guys do have experience. Some have zero Copperplate, but have some pointed pen experience. Great. Okay, great. So if you guys have it printed out, then feel free to follow along. I'm just going to flip my camera, and then I'll kind of walk you guys through just what we're gonna cover today. Okay, so let's see. I am going to flip my camera. Okay. Linda's one of my students. She came to my office for a workshop. So, okay, let's see here. All right. So here is what we have for the downloadables that you guys should have received when you have signed up for this session. So before we begin into the guide sheets, for those of you who might be new to pointed pen calligraphy and new to Copperplate, I just want to go over some of the basic supplies that you'll be needing to get started on your journey. And so the first thing I wanted to kind of talk about is what are some supplies that I personally use and have on my desk ready when I'm ready to practice. So the first thing you need is a pointed pen, a pen holder. Okay, this one already has a pointed nib in it. And then you'll need some ink. Okay, so I have my ink here. This is actually something that I sell in my shop. It's acrylic inkwell, and it has like these little grooves here, which are cut out into the shape of the bottom of these plastic vials. And the reason why I keep ink into these small little dinky dips, which is what it's called, it's because it's very easy for me to dip my nib into the ink. Instead of trying to use the original ink bottle and then trying to dip my pen in here, it gets really messy. This is something that I highly, highly recommend if you are just getting started. This is something I use literally every single time I sit down to practice. So these are called dinky dips. They're screw top plastic vials. This one, I decided to create an acrylic one because it's easy for me to clean up any mess from ink stains or spillage. Before I used to have like non-finished wooden ones, but I realized how easily it gets stained and it just doesn't really last for a long time. So I don't have any more of this particular design, but if you guys are interested, I do have these black matte ones. I just restocked these recently. So that's just something I highly recommend to have some sort of an inkwell with a dinky dip. You'll need a pen holder, but the pen holder comes in both straight as well as an oblique. So an oblique pen just means that it has this metal flange attached to the holder. And what this does is that it really helps you to keep your nib at a consistent slant. And so for Copperplate, because it is a slanted script and it has it's written with a 55-degree slant. I personally use an oblique pen most of the time, but I do know some calligraphers do like having and writing with a straight holder. Let me just, okay. So for the straight holder, I think depending on what kind of what kind of script that you're learning. If you're learning a more upright pointed pen script like Unshell, I remember taking a class in IMPath convention like a couple years ago, and I think for upright script, the straight holder works really well for that. But generally, because most of my work is written in copperplate or spencerian, and they're written in both 52 to 55-degree slant, I do write a lot with the oblique holder. Okay. So this one is by Heather Hell. This one's by Jake Weidman, but you can find straight holders as cheap as this one. This one is just a dual workshop holder. It has both the ability to be an oblique as well as a straight. You just pull out this metal flange here, and then it slides right out. And then there's a little inner circle here where you can just insert your nib. Okay, so so as I'm sharing, as I'm talking, feel free to use the chat box to ask any questions. Okay. Okay, so moving on to pointed nib. So pointed nib, basically, it looks something like this. This one is a Nico G's, one of my favorite nibs that I use for both copperplate or spencerian, but this is more on the beginner-friendly kind of a rigid. It's a little more firm in terms of the flexibility. There are a lot of different nibs out there, so I know it can be very overwhelming. Some of the nibs are super flexible, so even if you don't put a lot of pressure, the tines, which are the left and the right tine of the nib, are going to separate easily. And so just as an example here, okay, this is from my shop too. This is a sampler set. This one, Hunt 101, is super flexible. So again, you don't have to put too much pressure, but I find that it really separates the tines so easily. So you have to be careful with this before the ink kind of comes out. And then other beginner-friendly nibs, like the more firm and rigid flexibility nibs, they have give you a better ability to control the pressure of your nib. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. So I like to start my students with a more firm flexibility with the nibs because it's easier to control. And I still like even after like 10 years of learning pointed pen and studying pointed pen, I still use the Nico G. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so let's move on to why it's important to use guide sheets. And so in order for me to kind of share the importance of guide sheets, I did want to pull out some of my first practice sheets that I've written when I first began my journey in pointed pen script back in 2014. So I took my first Copperplate workshop with Kay Hanna when I was living in Florida. And then this was like just, I think one of the first times I was like practicing out letters and I was trying to, just get comfortable using the pointed pen. And I want you guys to really look at just kind of like the sheet here. And back then, I didn't really find a lot of like the guide sheets that you guys will probably have access to today. But 10 years ago, this was the only kind of paper that was available for me to use. And so this is actually from John Neal Books. Paper and Ink Arts also have them as well, the Copperplate graph pad. And let me just zoom in a little bit closer so you can see better. Okay. All right, so as you can see, they do have the slant lines, which are super helpful, the 55-degree slant for the copper plate. But what I realized as I was practicing these letters was that it was hard for me to kind of visually see where I need to start and end my strokes. Because as soon as you guys will see, your entrance and the way that you finish, and even like how far up you want to take your ascenders, it all has an importance of where you finish because you don't want to have some, let me go over here. Again, this is like another page here. Let's see here. So as you can see right here, because it wasn't easy for me to have a set baseline or a waistline, I would try to like estimate as I'm writing, but you can tell that my A here is a lot smaller than what it should be if I was going to be consistent with my letters. So that's why, like for me, I created my own guide sheets because I needed a clear baseline, a waistline of first a center line, second a center line, first descender line, and second descender line. Because when you look at copperplate letters, not all the letters have the same kind of ratio in terms of height. So if I were to kind of pull back here and show you guys an exemplar of my copperplate letters, these are the lowercase letters that I include in my course handouts. But as you can see, we have these short letters, these small letters like A, C, E, which only take up your X height, which is a distance between your baseline and your waistline. So you have this is called like 1 unit, right? Space. So this is 1 unit space high. But then you have letters that have these ascenders, right? You have an ascending stem loop here like B and F, but you also have letters with like F that have a descending stroke that go below the baseline. And so some of the descending space are going to stop at the first line, and some of them are going to go all the way down, like your letter Q, to the second descender line. So it's really important to have all of those lines marked off for you as you're practicing so that later on, even if you don't have the guide sheets, you know that letter P is going to be shorter in terms of your descender than your letter Q. And you know, even with letter T, it's going to be shorter in your height than compared to letters like K or L. So all of these things really play like a factor in how you practice. And also when you're writing out words, it will really show in your pieces. And so let's move on to, so basically this is why I realized that after practicing on something like this, I needed a little bit more guidelines for me to practice with intention so that I can know when to start, when to stop, how much my stroke needs to go high and how low. And so that's pretty much how this whole packet got created. I created these out of kind of my own personal need to help me in my practices to see better like consistency with my letter forms as well as just maximizing those things. Okay. So let me go through kind of the first page that you should see here is how to use these guide sheets. So in order to understand how to use the guide sheets, we have to first understand all of the meaning of these Let me see, this is a little bit, okay, can you see this okay? All right. Okay, so we have, again, as I shared with you before, we're gonna have 6 horizontal lines as well as the slant line. And then I did actually add in another horizontal line here because some of our entrance strokes and our exit strokes, not exit strokes, I mean my entrance strokes are gonna stop at half of your X height. Again, the X height is your distance between this baseline as well as your waistline. And then you have your first ascender, second ascender, you have your first descender and second descender line. So as I shared with you before, some of the letters are going to go up to your second ascender line. Some of them are going to go down to your first or second descender line. And then your capital letters. Capital letters are going to have like at least 3 units high. And then your longer letters like capital letter Z is going to go all the way down to take up all 5 unit space in height. So these are your letter Z's here. Okay, so but we're not gonna have time to go into uppercase today, just because I want to this will be kind of like a teaser introduction to Copperplate. So let me, okay, so again, so this is a 55-degree slant line. So every time you go down on your strokes here, so you want to align your pen so that your nib is running parallel to that slant line. So it shouldn't look like this where you're going to drag it this way, because that's really going to affect the tines of your nib. You really want to make sure that your nib is aligned parallel to the slant line so that when you go down your slant line, you see how my tines are opening up as I add pressure. This is what's going to give you that shade and the thickness of your strokes. And as you release pressure and lift lightly up your hand, the tines are going to come together to a point, and that's going to give you that hairline stroke. So just make sure that when you are putting your pen to paper, usually I'll relax my shoulders, make sure that my forearm muscle is being pivoted at the side of my table. And then I'm going to place my paper, my guide sheet underneath my pen and then align my nib to the sand line. So that's definitely something I look for when I'm looking at my students practicing is oftentimes we tend to kind of, switch up the angle and then I have to redirect it back to that sight line. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so the things that you have in your packet, you have all of these ratios that were given to you. The ratio that I like to start with is a 2 to 1, 2 by 1 by 2, which means that your ascender space is double your X height and your descender space is double your X height. So 2 spaces to 1 to 2. However, some people do like another popular ratio, which is a 3 by 2 by 3, which I also included in the packet. And that one will give you more of a shorter height for your uppercase letters or your ascender letters. So you can see already that compared to this one versus this one, the ascender space here is only 1.5 in height compared to your X height. And so some people really enjoy the 3 by 2 by 3 because it's not as long to do the capital letters and they find it a little bit easier. But some people like having the capital letter and the ascender descenders be a little bit more elongated compared to the short letters. So you can try both and see what you guys like. Okay, so let's move on to kind of the basic strokes. Let's see. Let me know if you have any questions along the way. Okay, so I have my general guide sheet here, which is the 4/16 of an inch guide sheet. And this one is where I like to practice my letters because if you practice on a smaller X height, then it's really hard for you to get down to the details of the strokes. But I like to practice a little bit more bigger so that I can see my letters clearly, and then you can move down to a smaller X height and they'll be easier for you to transition that way. So you have a regular one that has all of the lines that we talked about, but I've also included guide sheets that have these oval embedded guide sheets that I've put it along each of the slant line. And we'll talk about how to use this particular one. And I've actually included other oval embedded guide sheets, and you might be wondering, what's this one for, right? This oval is on the left side of the slant line, and then this one is very small details, but this one is placed on the right of the slant line. And the reason why I've added these two is actually because of my students. As I teach my course and students have questions or they have a hard time with certain letters, I love creating additional guide sheets to help them through their practice. So I'll show you guys and I'll demo a couple of letters of how you can practice each of these different ones. But let me first go through what's in your packet. Okay. Then you have your uppercase letters, which I'm not going to be able to demo for you today, but you're more than welcome to use them for your own practice. But this one, again, the reason why I've embedded the ovals into the uppercase guide sheet is because for me, it was really hard for me to really see the ovals when I was practicing my uppercase letter. And if you guys have heard this before, Copperplate is based on an oval shape. You will see ovals everywhere, and ovals are going to be what really brings that beauty of the Copperplate script, alive. So I really needed to have this visual guide as I'm practicing each of the letters. And then I have here, let me see. This is a 3x2x3. So again, I have the ovals for the 3x2x3, as well as the capital ovals for that. And then these are also new guide sheets that I've added on over the years for my students. But again, I'm kind of giving it to you guys for free. This one is actually the STEM loop guide sheet. And the reason why I've created this one is because students were having a hard time opening up the loop of their stem. So what do I mean by stem loop? Those are all of the letters of how, like these are all called stem loops. You have your B's, your F, L, K, H. The goal for when you're practicing is that you want to try to have a consistent openness in these ascenders as well as descenders. But I noticed that some of the students were having trouble with collapsing this stem loop. And so that's why I've created this guide sheet so you can really practice with your ascenders as well as your descenders. So I'll show you guys that again. Let's see, Maj, I was asking, can you show how you're positioned towards the paper? So I am left-handed. So as a lefty, using an oblique holder like this, I hold my pen like this with my pointed finger and my thumb holding the pen on the top with my third finger on the bottom. And then I'm gliding along the side of my, pinky as well as my ring fingers kind of on top of each other along the paper like this. So as I'm writing, this is going to give me the control so that it's not just lifted, away from the paper, but I'm actually anchoring it down by the side of this hand as I'm writing it, and then I'm gliding it, but then I'm also anchoring my forearm muscle to the side of the desk. And so my current paper angle is 90 degrees to the right, and I'm writing towards my body. But as a right-hander, I have seen right-handed calligraphers also rotate their paper 90 degrees to the left. So if you guys know Michael Sull, he's one of the master penmen. When I got to watch him write in person, I was a little bit surprised because I didn't realize that even right-handers also can turn their paper 90 degrees to the left. And then they also write away from their body in that like paper angle. So I would say start from like 45 degrees paper angle and kind of adjust until you find your sweet spot, until you find a place where you are most comfortable holding your paper and holding, your pen holder. So that is something that just, to like a benchmark, kind of like what you should start with, and then you can adjust accordingly. Naturally, I am an underwriter, but I did have to adjust my grip. When I had to hold my pen, I held it like this with a normal pencil, but then with a pen holder, I had to kind of adjust my pen holder to like this. Okay, so before I would hold my middle finger on top and I would really grip it hard. And this was really preventing the movement of my finger. But then now with calligraphy, I've adjusted my pen hole so that I only use these two, and then I'm able to have more motion as I'm writing. Okay, great. So let's move on to the next guide sheet, which is a Copperplate drill guide sheets. So this is also another guide sheet that I've created for my students. And this one I've actually spaced the slant lines right next to each other and spacing with the oval in between. And the reason why I did this one is because when you're working on your drills, which is repetitive drills again and again, for the lowercase letters, we do have 7 basic strokes that we cover. So here are the 7 basic strokes. You have your entrance and your exit stroke. You have your overturn stroke, underturn stroke, your compound curve stroke, your ovals, your ascending stem loop, and your descending stem loop. So the reason why I created this particular guide sheet is so that for those that were students that were struggling with really seeing that oval embedded into that overturn and underturn strokes, they are going to be able to kind of practice and gain that muscle memory as they use this drill guide sheet. Okay, so that's something that I'll also demo for you guys. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so Copperplate, and this is just a regular slant line. This is a 55 degree. You can put this behind a graph paper if you want to. And then this guide sheet is for when I'm practicing my numbers. I pretty much gave you guys everything, like not everything, but I gave you guys most of the guide sheets that I do cover with my students. So whether or not you're part of my course, it doesn't matter. You guys can still use the guide sheets for your practice. Okay, and then you have another packet here that you've gotten, which is the lowercase basic traceable practice sheets. And so this one I created because I realized that students needed a little bit more help reinforcing the shape of the basic strokes. And so I've kind of like written this myself, scanned it in, and created these practice guide sheets practice sheets so that people can use this as a traceable guide for when they practice. So this one is the entrance stroke. So all of the 7 basic strokes, you should have the ability to practice. So let me go into kind of like sharing with you guys about, why Copperplate is so fascinating to me and why I love teaching it. So let's go back to my other guide sheet here. Okay, so as I shared with you guys before, these are the 7 basic strokes to Copperplate. You have all of these basic strokes. And whenever people ask me, what should I practice or how should I practice or what did you do when you first got started? As I shared with you guys before of my first practice sheet right here, I was really eager to like write out words. I was eager to just kind of like get started right away. I wanted to just kind of add my own flair. I wanted to try flourishing. You can see my letters up here. I was having fun, which is totally fine. But then I quickly realized that my script was, not as consistent as I wanted it to be. I felt like I wasn't seeing, the kind of Copperplate that I was admiring from my teachers. And so in order for me to kind of take a step back, I realized that I needed to really study and master the basic strokes first. And that's why I always emphasize the importance of focusing on the basics, because as you master and really get these 7 basic strokes down, this really helps you to form a majority of your Copperplate letters. Not that all of the Copperplate letters are formed by these 7 strokes, but let me see. We do have some exceptions to, the basic strokes, but generally most of your, wait, I'm trying to find my exemplar. Where did my exemplar go? Okay, so with the exception to some of the letters like S or let's see here. Okay, pulling this back up again. So exceptions to the rule for the basic stroke. So some letters that are very clearly a combination of these, one of these, like 3 of these basic strokes is letters like A. Right? So you have half of your entrance stroke, you have your oval, and then you have your underturn stroke. The fact that you can name these basic strokes and be able to piece them together is really going to help you to understand how to form the letter form. So how to form the letters. And so that is something that is very clear to see, right? Other letters like S is not as direct. We're not going to be using exactly the specific basic strokes. However, because you are practicing the ovals, you're practicing the shapes, you're understanding that you have to pick up your pen, then you are going to be able to, kind of master even like difficult letters like S using the guide sheets. And I'm going to show you guys how to even practice letter S using the guide sheet. But okay, here's another example. For letters like M, this will be your overturn stroke, pick up your pen, another overturn stroke, pick up your pen, and then you're going to add in your compound curve stroke. So it's really like, yeah, that's why I find it really fascinating and fun to be able to, focus on the basics, keep practicing this until you find your confidence and you kind of know how to have consistency in your basic strokes. And then when you practice your letter forms, you will naturally see improvement in your letters. Julia was asking, I'm working on Spencerian, so should I wait to perfect it before learning Copperplate? So for me, I began my journey with Copperplate and then I picked up Spencerian a year later. So was my Copperplate perfect when I started Spencerian? Definitely not. I think it really depends on, I guess, what you want to do. I mean, if you really want to see your Spencerian at a certain like level of mastery before you pick up another script, that's totally fine. But some people, maybe they need a little bit of a change, and to learn a different pointed pen script will kind of give them a little breather, like take a breather from Copperplate and be able to learn something new can be more stimulating. And so for me, I actually enjoyed learning both and practicing both at the same time. When I picked up Spencerian, obviously I still needed to practice my Copperplate. However, I will say that because both of those scripts are pointed pen, you're still using the same tools, the same kind of paper, ink, like all of that stuff. And even the guide sheets are very similar in that you have to be mindful of the slant line, you have to be mindful of your baseline, your X height, your height of your letters, your width of your letters. So Spencerian has a whole like other guide sheet that I've created for my Spencerian class and my students. However, I find that the transition between Spencerian Copperplate or going from Copperplate to Spencerian is a little easier than, let's say, switching from a pointed pen script to a like broad edge script like italics, right? Because that one, I feel like, you might have to use a straight holder or you might have to, be more comfortable using a broad edge versus a pointed like pen. And so I think that will be a little bit more difficult than trying to learn, if you wanted to pick up Copperplate after Spencerian. So hopefully that helps kind of clarify things. Okay, thanks, Catherine. Let's see, any other questions? Okay, so let's go into, I'm going to just demo a couple of letters and then let me just show you guys. Okay, let's see. So right now, if you guys are going to follow along with me, why don't you take out the guide sheet that has the oval to the left of the sand line. Because I'm going to show you guys how to use this guide sheet when practicing letters like A. So I have a couple letters here that I'm going to demo for you guys, and then at the end, time permitting, I love to write some of your names in Copperplate. Okay, so if you guys are following along, this is the guide sheet that I'm going to be using. This one is your 4/16 of an inch guide sheet with the ratio is going to be 2 by 1 by 2. Okay, so I'm going to be using walnut ink. Still using the Nico G. Okay, I forgot to mention, I'm wearing this sock guard. So usually it's important to use a guard as you write because you want to keep that oily hands, natural oils from your hand away from your paper, because once that gets on your paper and then it kind of interacts with your ink, it can kind of mess things up. So whether you put like an extra sheet of paper underneath your wrist, or you can make your own sock guard like this, you just put a hole here for your thumb, and then I just cut the slit off on the top. It kind of helps me to glide better when I'm writing and also keep my hand dry as I'm using ink and writing. my letters. I know some of you guys might be using like a glove, like a hand glove from Amazon, and I've actually ordered it because, as you guys might know, I have picked up engraving last year, and I thought, oh, maybe it will help me to have more cushion. But I realized that like the hand glove for me personally, I don't like having anything covering my fingers. It was like such a weird feeling. And so I went back to the sock guard. So for me, the sock works the best. You can just, grab any sock you have in your drawer and then cut off the top. I like having all my fingers like open, accessible, and then my thumb. So the other glove that I have that I might use maybe for just engraving, it covers my pinky and my ring finger, and it just makes my hand feel really hot. And it was not as comfortable as I thought it would be. So then I just kind of switched over back to my sock guard. Um, Okay, flourishing is a completely like separate course and category, and that's a whole different topic. I don't think I have time today to talk about flourishing, but the flourishing also does follow that oval form, and it's so important for you to see those ovals in your flourishing. For me, that is something that is super important when I am finishing my flourishing strokes. So I don't know if I have a sample here. Hold on a second. Sorry for going back and forth. I feel like, for those of you who guys are here, live, I do want to at least touch upon your questions. I'm trying to see if I have an example. Oh, okay, here it is. So I have here, this is like one of the pieces that I wrote for my book. And I had to scan this in for my book, and then I had written this. As a sample of flourishing. And so just really, really quick, when we talk about flourishing and we talk about ovals, I do it's very important to see ovals in not only just your basic letter forms for Copperplate, but also with flourishing. So just so we can see here really quickly, you see how, all of these have an oval in it. Even when I'm ending my stroke for my flourishes, I always envision this oval here at the end. And then all of these bigger ovals here, this is an oval, over here is an oval, this little, small oval to change directions. It's so as long as you maintain that narrow oval shape, it's gonna look, the flourishing will look very nice. Instead of going from an oval shape for your copperplate letters, but then for your flourishing, you don't want to make it too rounded. So I like to keep it consistent with having this kind of like an oval shape with your flourishing. Um, Suzanne's asking how to hold a pen to get the ink flowing. So the main thing for the ink flow is you just want to make sure not to hold it too low, like of your pen. The nib to your paper shouldn't be so low or so high. If you hold it too high and you press down really hard, ink is going to come out like a lot. And especially if you're using a nib that is more flexible than a Nico G, then you might have a hard time controlling your ink flow. But at the same time, I noticed that some students keep their nib at a very low angle. And so what this does is that you're not going to get those nice contrasts between your thick and thins. So with those students, I like to adjust their angle of their nib so that it's at least at about 45 degrees from the bottom of your paper, so that when you do press down, you have a nice flex and you can lift upward, release your pressure, and have a nice thick to thin contrast. So start at 45 degrees, make sure you're not going too high or too low, and then that should really help. Okay, so if you have really thick strokes, that's totally fine. Some people are naturally heavier handed than others. There's nothing wrong with having a thicker shade compared to someone else. I think I have generally like a lighter hand per se, but also depends again on the kind of nib you're using. So if you use a nib that has more flex, then all of your strokes are going to come out more thicker than if you're going to use a nib with a more rigid tip. So make sure to kind of check those things. Check your nib, check the pressure that you're exerting onto your nib. And then also as you continue to practice, I've had students that go from a heavier, like shaded script to a lighter hand. With practice, you can control even your pressure and release. So that will come with time. What's a good timeline for beginning Copperplate? Okay. I think for the worksheets, like if you're talking about the basic worksheets, as long as you have a sense of like, I don't, the basics are not going to be done in a week. I would say that, it will take some time, depending on how much time you have. You might want to spend one day just focusing on your overturn strokes or your underturn strokes, and then just seeing how you do without the traceables to see how consistent they look and whether or not this downstroke is going to be on your slant line. And then sometimes you might want to change it up and then focus more on your longer strokes, like your ascenders or your descenders. And then you can just segment out your practices depending on how you feel and how confident you feel executing these basic strokes. There's no like set like, oh, like do this one sheet for like 2 days and then you'll be fine. I think I always even go back to the basics, even, periodically, especially when I was first beginning, my first year or two, when I'm still building that muscle memory, I find that I had to continually practice using the traceables as well as going back to the basics. Okay, so let's go back to what I was going to share with you here. Okay, so you guys have this guy sheet here with the ovals to the left of the slant line. Oh, yes, David is here. Hi, David. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in here. Okay, and then, sorry, the lighting is a little bit, okay, I think this should be better. Okay, so again, I'm using my walnut ink. I'm going to just demo for you guys how we practice using these guide sheets with letters like A. Okay. And making sure that your nib is aligned to the slant of your guide sheet. You're going to dip your nib into your ink. Okay, sometimes I like to do like the scribble test to make sure my ink is flowing. Okay. Okay, so I'll use it from here. Okay, so the upstroke for the entrance stroke is going to be half of your X height. So the full one is going to go from your baseline to your waistline. But with letters like A, we want to stop it at the half of your X height because the next stroke here is going to be your oval. Oops. So nervous, guys. Okay, so you don't have to follow exactly this oval shape here. You can pick up your pen. Around. The thickest part of the oval should be right here at the center. Pick up your pen and then you're going to do your underturn stroke. Okay, so that's your A. So the spacing between like the width of your oval should be the same as your underturn stroke. Okay, so those are the things that I'm looking for is I'm making sure that I'm not overlapping the stroke. So it shouldn't be like this. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but if you're not moving your nib over to the right enough, this is going to be the issue that you will encounter is that you're going to overlap your strokes and it's going to look really constricted. So you want to make sure to space apart your strokes so that they're barely touching each other for each stroke. Okay, so entrance stroke, pick up your pen, your oval, around. Pick up your pen, and then you have your underturn stroke. Oh, I'm so nervous. I feel like I had too much coffee this morning. Okay. So then that's an example of using 3 basic strokes in your letters. So letters like A, but if let's say you have a letter like G, this is also a great guide sheet to use to practice if you have a letter with an oval as well as you also need the slant line. Okay, so the reason why I use this particular one is letters like G, you have your entrance stroke, lift up your pen, you have your oval. Okay, lift up your pen, and then you can use this slant line here to do your downstroke. Lift up your pen, and then your full exit stroke is your G. Okay, so the reason why I placed the oval to the left of the slant line is because I realized that some of the letters, you're going to need both the oval as a guide as well as the slant line as a guide. Okay, so these are some examples of letters where you can use this particular guide sheet. So you want to make sure that the down underturn stroke is on that slant line, similar to your G is going to be on that slant line. The width of the bottom of the descending stem should be the same as the width of your oval. So generally, like after I do this oval and I'm doing this descending stem loop, I look at the top here. My eye is here. As I'm writing this, I just want to make sure it's not going to be too wide or too narrow for the shape of this descending stem loop. Okay. So those are things to that I'm practicing as I am, doing these letter forms. I want to make sure I'm not constricting it. I'm not overlapping the different strokes here. I'm going to be watching out for the slant line, the oval shape, and making sure I'm picking up my pen after each particular stroke. Okay, so another example for this particular guide sheet. So any letters that have an oval and then you have something else that have a slant line. So let me just go here real quick. Okay, so letters like A, you can use that particular guide sheet. Letters like D, because you have an oval and then you need to do a slant right next to it. Letters like G that we just did. And then let's see, even letters like Y, this one right here would work really well for that particular guide sheet. Because even letters like Y, let me just show you using this pen here. So for letters like Y, you can practice like this. You have your compound curve this way. Okay, pick up your hand, and then you have your descending stem loop. And you can actually practice copperplate with pencil. I think if you, even with pencil, I feel like there's a lot of value to learning and understanding the letters in your mind. So it's kind of like engraving the knowledge of the letter forms in your mind so that when you're actually picking up your pen, your mind is going to tell your hand like what to write or how to write it. So even if you know how to do consistency in your letters using a pencil and know how to draw each stroke down, that I think that will still be valuable. So if you, let's say you're traveling, or let's say you don't have access to ink or pen right now, that's totally fine. Just like I'm doing right now with just a marker or a pen, you can just draw these letter forms so you can see. Okay, so again, like I'm using this particular guide sheet for any letters that have an oval shape that we need to keep in mind, and then you get connecting it to a downstroke or, an ascender space. So, for D, you start up here and then you go down, right? And then for letters like G or Y, you're going to go below the baseline. And this is similar to letter G in that, you want to have this space be the same as this space, okay? And then you want to make sure you envision that oval, on the inside, keeping this downstroke on your slant line, okay? And then picking up your pen. And this is also the same. You want to have a similar width for the top and the bottom for G and Y. Okay, so let's do the other guide sheet. I'm going to show you guys how to do this one. Okay, so with this particular guide sheet, with the one where the oval is kind of being bisected by the slant line, the thing that I really like about this one is it really helped me to practice my S. So let me go back here, or even like short letters. Okay, so you can scribble. Okay, so let's say C. Oops, let's do it here. C, we're going to do half entrance stroke, pick up your pen. Okay, oval, come around the oval, retrace, tuck it in, and finish with your dot. Okay, so with letters like C, even though it doesn't have that complete oval, you realize you can see that the oval still plays a part in this letter form. Okay, so that's how I would practice letter C. And then even with letter S, this is what I loved about this guide sheet for letter S, is I would go my entrance stroke, add a shade to the left side of that entrance stroke. And then when I come down here, I'm going to go add a pressure at the bottom, in the middle, pick up my pen, add a pressure on top of this entrance stroke, and then do your exit stroke, okay? So letter S was like my enemy. I feel like it was so hard for me to get that shape right. But I think using this particular guide sheet really, really helped. So let me show you guys my first S, okay? You see like how, it was really thick all throughout. I was just going I didn't pick up my pen. I didn't know, how to see that like oval shape. And so I feel like this really helped me to kind of break apart the letter form in a way that I can really practice with consistency. So this is kind of an upside down C. So if you rotate the paper, this part right here will be like an upside down C. So let's do that again. So S will be entrance stroke, add a pressure to the left. Okay, pick up your pen so you can have more pressure when you come down here. I'm going to go thin to thick to thin, add a pressure here, okay, and then exit stroke. Okay, but with letter S, there are different variations. You don't have to add a pressure up here. If some of you guys are modern calligraphers, you can just go straight down. No, like just keep the top all hairline stroke. Okay, you can even like bring that bottom part of the S a little bit below the baseline. You can keep the top part more open loop like that. Okay, there are slight variations for the letter forms, which I do actually include in my course as well. I have a little lesson called lowercase variations. I don't like to go too far, out like, from the basics, but I do show you guys just small little ways that you can add variation to your letters. So let's see for another one that we do. And obviously this one's going to help you with your letter like O. You just go entrance stroke, lift up your pen, your oval, close it up, lift up your pen, put a little shade to the left side of that hairline stroke, and then we're going to do your exit stroke, okay? And even like letters like E, this guide sheet, like literally, guys, it really, really helps so much with my own practice. And so it makes me really happy to see my students as well as just people like using the guide sheets to really maximize their practice time. So this is how I would use this particular one with the oval that's being bisected by the slant line. And then let me see if, oh, okay. And then I'm going to show you guys how to use this guide sheet, which is we did this one where the oval was to the left of the slant line. We did this one where it was bisected by the slant line. And now I'm going to show you guys how to use this one where the oval is to the right of the slant line. Okay, so we notice that the ovals are being positioned to the right of the slant. So for this particular one, we can use the example like, let's see. Oh, okay, like P. So P, we're gonna have we're gonna use the slant line first, and then we need that oval, okay? So here for P, we're gonna do your exit stroke, your entrance stroke, pick up your pen here. Then we're gonna, on your first ascender to your first descending line, we're gonna do your full pressure stroke. Lift up your pen with the squared bottom and top. While the ink is wet, I like to just kind of touch it up a bit, okay? Then you go retrace very lightly. Add pressure, okay? Pick up, oh, and then you finish with a dot here, sorry, okay? At the bottom, pick up your pen, and then you're gonna do your exit stroke, okay? So again, I love these because you can use both the slant as well as the ovals to really practice your letter forms. Another example can be your letter H. Okay, so let's do letter H together. So we can do your entrance stroke, pick up your pen, okay? You're gonna do your ascending stem loop. on your slant line down to your baseline. And then for this oval, it's going to help us to kind of open up our compound curve stroke. Like that. Okay, so it really, so again, this is just about how to practice intentionally, how to practice, just basically like to how to maximize using these guide sheets. So let me see. Oh, okay. Let me just go over. It's already 12:55, but let me just quickly show you guys that ascending stem loop guide sheet that I was gonna demo for you guys here. And then I'll take some name requests. So feel free to share your names, and then I can try to write a couple of names as we wrap up. I don't want to hold you guys for too long. But okay, so here is my ascending and descending guide sheet. It's called my STEM loop guide sheet. Again, I created this. Really, I have my students to think. I feel like the more engaged and the more questions my students have, the better teacher I'm able to be. It really causes me to find a solution for, the struggles that my students have. And so it's really exciting to be able to create these resources. Okay, so for the ascenders and the descend, this is how I want you guys to practice the opening up your descending stem loops and your ascending stem loops. Okay, so with the descending stem loops, you're gonna go from thick to thin and lift up your pen. Okay, you're just gonna do this repetitive. Thin, thick to thin, and lift up your pen. Okay. Stay on your slant line, thick to thin. Come around and lift up your pen at the baseline. And then for the ascenders, you are going to start at your waistline here. You're going to go up, come around, and gradually add pressure as you go down on your slant line. Okay, so you just go up, around, gradually add pressure, and the thickest part should be at the baseline. Okay, so that's how you would practice this particular guide sheet. Okay, so you guys are sharing. Yay. Okay, I will write some names here. Let me just grab my guide sheet. I will use this one. Thank you guys for joining. I think we had over 500 or 600, almost 600 people sign up for this live session. And I was like so surprised and really excited that a lot of you guys are interested in learning Copperplate. So I know that you guys have a lot going on probably in your own life. So thank you for taking the time to hang out with me. Okay, so let me move this over. Let me just scroll up here. Okay, so let's do, okay, I see Su Young. Okay, so Su Young is going to be S. Okay. U. So usually for lowercase, I like after my uppercase letters, I like to tuck it under. Okay. Su. And with the Y, the basic, Copperplate, you can do it with that compound curve first, but sometimes I like to even, begin it with um, with this underturn stroke. Okay, so Y, O, U, N, and then G. So just a quick thing about flourishing here is that usually for something that I like to do for G is instead of doing this thick to thin part, I like to just use it with a tip here. Can just add a little bit of flourishing and do something like that. If you want to just do a little point here instead of that squared top. Okay, let's see what else. Let's do Kimberly. Okay, Kimberly. I actually love writing the letter K. I think it's so pretty. Okay, can you see it okay? So even with capital letters for Copperplate, they do have some basic strokes to master. That's going to help you to execute the uppercase letters. Okay, so compound curve, entrance stroke, capital stem. Okay, even with capital letters for Copperplate, there's like ways to practice your capital letters so that you can have consistency with that. So you can your eyes. Always nerve-wracking to write live. Oh, somebody's asking about R. Here's your R. Add a pressure, come down, stay on your slant, camber. And here's your compound curve for your Y. Mhm. Kimberly. Let's see, maybe I can do like one or two more. Were there letter sample sheets in the print packets? There's no letter ones particularly, only the basic ones, but I think I might have some letter samples. You know what? When I send you guys the replay link, like a post, if you guys signed up for the live session, and then I'll send out like the replay link, I'll add some letter sample sheets, because I do offer that digital downloadable Copperplate practice pads. Let me show you guys. So in my shop, this is actually the first product that I've created. Like back in 2016 is when I created these Copperplate practice pads. I have one in both uppercase as well as lowercase. So the uppercase one, I only have the uppercase one right now, actually. But it has these sample names that I actually got from Instagram. Like people were sharing their names that I've included. And then it also has each of that letter breakdown for the uppercase letters and personal notes as well as the traceables. So I can maybe put together some sample sheets of like maybe one lowercase, one uppercase, and like a sample word letter connection, but this is something that you can either self-study if you want to practice and learn Copperplate, or right now I do have my Copperplate Foundations course that is closing tomorrow. I'm going to be closing my registration tomorrow, and then we're going to start all together on Thursday. So let's see. I do want to do maybe one more. One more. Is there a reason why? Oh, let's see. Is there a reason why you separate the descending stem loop from the extra stroke and lift the pen? Okay, so the reason, that's a great question. The reason why all of these, the reason why we pick up our pen for like right here, I think the question was, Mother was asking the descending stem loop and then you pick up your pen for this. It's because a lot of times once you do the descending stem loops or the ascending stem letters, there's a lot of ink. And depending on what kind of ink that you use, that ink may not be dry by the time that you are doing your next stroke. And so the tendency is the walnut ink dries pretty fast and it's more translucent than sumi ink. But if you use inks like wash or other thicker inks, and depending on how heavy your hand is, the ink might be really wet. So if you don't pick up your hand and separate the strokes, there could be a possibility that you drag the wet ink over. So right now, if you kind of zoom in here, you notice that it's I'm gonna just be very close here. Okay. So you notice that right here, this extra stroke is all hairline stroke, right? However, let's say I'm just going straight through that wet ink here and I'm going to go straight through to exit. There could be a chance, not that there always is, but there could be a chance that I'm dragging that wet ink over here. And then this beginning part of the stroke can be very thick. And so I think that makes the reason we pick up our pen so often is because we want to make our script look clean and we want to make sure that none of this wet ink is going to be dragged over. So hopefully that helps answer that question. And then, okay, let's do one more. Sorry, I'm a little over time, but I'll just pick out one more name. Let's see, Esther. I think there was some request for a capital E. So let me just write Esther and then we'll wrap up. Thanks, guys, for hanging out. Oh, I'm so sorry, Maya. I wasn't sure if it was Maja or Maya. Thank you. Thank you for your questions. Okay, let's do Esther. I know for my name is really hard to pronounce too. So sometimes like I get sensitive about, how people are saying my name. So it's Young Hey. I always have to say, it's like, hey, like you say hi to someone. Okay, so let's do Esther and then we'll wrap up. If you guys have any questions about my course, feel free to ask me or email me afterwards. Okay, so letter E, we're going to start from up here. I do a little bit green. Add a small loop. Separate this out. Stay on your slant. Okay. And then we're going to, oops, is that not clear? What? Okay. And then we're going to retrace the top part. Pressure release, like that. Okay. And then we're going to do S. Again, I like to kind of tuck it underneath that capital letter because I just feel like it's more prettier that way. So I extend out the entrance stroke, add the pressure. Here is my S, T. Pick up my pen. Notice I'm always picking up my pen. And then the H. Oops. U. R. And then with the crossbar, we can just do it straight across like the basic one. Okay. Or if you want to do a little bit of flourishing, you can always bring that through the H like that. Suzanne was asking how long did it take you to envision the letters as you were rotating your paper? I can't remember exactly how long, but with anything, it does take time for you to, build that, muscle memory as well as, to have confidence in executing it, consistently. So I would say like at least a couple of months or as you keep practicing it. Because for me, I didn't look at it like letters. I was looking at the copperplate letters as different strokes. And so that was really helpful. As soon as you kind of deconstruct the copperplate letters to view them as individual strokes, then when you look at your guide sheet, you're able to not see like S as a whole, but you can see entrance stroke, shade, upside down C, comma dot, exit stroke. So I think in the beginning, I would have to make that mental note by saying, okay, I'm going to do my entrance stroke, my ascending stem loop, my compound curve, and all of those things really help me to kind of envision those letters separately. Let me just turn. Okay. Okay, so thank you guys for joining me today. It was a little bit of like a last minute thing that I decided to just try to pull together, and I'm just so grateful that technology was on my side. But hopefully, like this 1 hour session was helpful for you to just have a little bit of knowledge about copperplate, the reason why it's so important to use guide sheets, and to just see the letters in like a whole new way. So not to see them as like individual like letters, but like to see them as different basic strokes broken down. And so just as a reminder, again, my Copperplate Foundations course is ending. I'm going to be closing it tomorrow, and then usually open it about like twice a year, just because I have three different courses that I run throughout the year. And then I want to give ample time for my students to digest the material, ask questions, and be able to support my students throughout like the 9 weeks that we commit for the course. So the course download, I had a question recently, so I just wanted to clarify. So this is my Copperplate Foundations binder. So I have like a binder, you can see it over here. I have all these binders in the back, but I have a binder that I save all of my kind of like notes for the course and my homework exercises. They're all saved in individual binders. And this is what I encourage my students to do as well. You get like over 90 pages of downloads, but they do not include the practice traceable sheets. Only reason why is because the practice sheets are like used as a supplement to the course, but they're not included with the course downloads. And so the course download includes more of, I should have showed it to you guys because I know some of you guys were asking about this. They're more handouts. They're not traceables. So if that makes sense. So they're more like an ebook. Let me see if I can just hold it up. Maybe you guys can see it. Maybe I'll flip it. But anyways, there are like different you can kind of see here. There are like different notes here, and I break apart each of the letters with the different notes. So it's more of like a study guide for you guys to follow along as you watch the video lessons. And then we do like these live sessions similar to this, where I kind of give feedback on homework, help answer questions, and give further demos for any troubleshooting that students might have. So a lot of these guide sheets actually were created out of a need from my Copperplate students. So if you guys love the guide sheets for the ascenders or the drills, I really have my students to thank for that. So thank you so much again for joining for this live session. Hopefully it helped clarify a lot of things for you. And then if you have further questions, you can feel free to email me, and then I'll be sending out a follow-up email with those sample sheets for my practice books, as well as more information on my course if you guys are interested. Okay, guys, thank you so much. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll talk to you guys. Hopefully I can do more of these in the future.